and maybe I could get some reading in here before we get into discussions, because I do want to get through this. So this is continuing our discussion of Bernardo Kastrup. We have a feeler so far of what he's all about. We're pretty close in terms of what we think about ontology in a sense, except that we don't go as far as to say then that like the concepts that we have about things like the physical world or the universe are those things themselves in some way where we're like creating the physical world. Like that's not a property of the concepts that we have. And that's, yeah, not only is that not a property of the concept of the physical world that we have, like the property of the physical world that we understand is that it's non-psychological, in the sense that it operates by laws where no one has to actually be paying attention to it, for those laws to operate. And then the other one is just our ideas of concepts themselves are not such that they can do that. In the sense that they cannot. How do I want to say this? Yeah, like the concrete, like any concrete concept we have isn't some like ontological certainty. So it would also be kind of speculative to say that the physical world is anything at all, if we were to follow that path. So, yeah, I think we're good to follow. Yo, Darmadon, what's good? We're doing well. Good morning. I think we're just gonna be moving through more Bernardo stuff. Yeah, nice. Get a nice breakfast going, and make it a great day. Keen to find some quotes, and do some posters today. Nice. Coffee and bongs for breakfast. Nice. That's how to start off the day. All right. Mind at large, the universal subject. To avoid the challenge of solipsism, the belief that only one's own mind exists, and to account for the shared objective and law-like nature of reality, Kastrup posits the existence of a single universal and transpersonal field of subjectivity. Right, so this is how you'd have to get out of solipsism, because there's two things that gets him towards solipsism. It's the ontology of consciousness. So like consciousness has priority in terms of ontology, and then the second thing is then, which I think is a mistake, for him to say that the only thing that we can be certain of is our own consciousness. Because I think that still falls prey to our presuppositions about what consciousness is and what these things actually are. What else am I certain of? The point is that we're not certain of anything. Like that's the whole idea. Like that's the whole idea of a existential phenomenology. It's that we're always facing potential. So even my understanding about my own consciousness is already in some fallen state where we are we're making something concrete. It's like similar to the disillusion of the self. Like the self is not something that we can just like reduce into something that we can be certain of. Like it's not something I could say that is definitely the case, or it's something I can put a box around or like understand like a clear identity of. Like the self, just like consciousness, or I shouldn't say that. The self, just like any other concept that we have, even consciousness, is one where like our grasp of it is very much incomplete. But still, the sense of self appears in or is absent in consciousness. That is your understanding of what consciousness as a concept is, right? Like you're paying attention to these experiences that you're having, and you're putting an interpretive lens of this is happening through consciousness. Now, granted, like I'm trying to point out that this isn't necessarily like a bad thing, but just in the same way that we can make sense of our experience through something like consciousness, and we can say that consciousness has like ontological priority because it seems like meaning is disclosed in this experience. We can similarly talk about the physical world as something that is disclosed to us or affects our consciousness, etc. In such a way where we are just dealing with concepts at the end of the day. We're trying to make sense of our experience through our conceptual understanding, and this manifests in our experience. Would you prefer I use we can't use no concepts. We can't use no words. Concepts, we talk about through language, but like language, it doesn't have to be like verbal language. Like I think the topic of concept for these linguistics goes as far as any type of pattern recognition that you could possibly consider. Granted, we have a nice complex vocabulary with which we can leverage to, we could say theoretically consider more complex concepts. But yeah. No, yeah, like I do understand that, like you could say that there's a priority of the concept of consciousness because it, by like its own property, is that it is the thing that creates meaning for us. Like it's the thing that discloses the meaning for us. So like conceptually, you could give that priority, and that's why we say that consciousness is ontologically not prior. It has ontological priority. This is similar to conversation you can have with Advaitins where they deconstruct every concept that is referenced to say it's an abstraction. It's like, okay, but this is simply poor framing of the two truths. I'd have to go back to check to refresh on the two truths. Can you give me a brief refresher on the two truths? Okay. And then ultimate truth. Right. But yeah, the difficult. So this is a difficulty that Heidegger pointed out, because Heidegger talks about a capital T truth that pertains to capital B being, and it's similar to this type of truth, which he connects to this like authentic being, this being towards potentiality itself. And the issue is, how do you put something like that into words? You have to abstract it, and you have to reduce it into words somehow. So even like a description of this is like a reduction of what this actually is as it's experienced. Maybe copy my oh, okay, and how it's relevant. I could type something out, but robot is smart. Robot is smart. Right. So for Heidegger, this is capital B being, and this is lowercase b being, kind of. Conventional relative truth. This is actually not the case. This is a different topic. This is just colloquially what we talk about as truth. There's really a truth in between here. There's a truth in between ultimate truth and conventional truth, and that is the concrete being that we experience. So whenever we put something into grasp and we feel certain about it as this is the way it is, that's the lowercase b being that would go, that would be like the, it's not necessarily conventional truth. It's like not yet there, because this conventional truth, this is more so a description of how like society ends up talking about truth, but there's one that's still like in the existential discussion, which is like whenever you experience the world, you're experiencing lowercase b being, and you're also experiencing, obviously, the uppercase b being. I was trying to say you can always say abstractions are not it, but then you can't have a conversation and there is a ton of it. Yeah, I do agree. I think the idea is they are both true from their perspective. Right. Yep. Right, but once again, like when we're having these discussions, they're all embedded in this same game of we are trying to conceptualize things, or we're leveraging these concepts that we that manifest to us in our experience, that we could say that we understand, stuff like that. Which is, I mean, we have to do that. You know, I'm not saying that's not not good. It's just that we have to be careful when we're talking about consciousness itself, or when we're talking about ultimate truth itself, that we don't assume that what our understanding of this concept or this thing is the thing itself. So even these, you know, as I said, these words are reductions. So yeah, no, consciousness, like, but I could say that ultimate truth is like, there's a property of ultimate truth such that it is the thing that I am experiencing. Like it makes sense of, or it encapsulates my experience, my entire experience, my holistic experience. But that's like a property of this thing, of this concept, as I'm experiencing it. So, you know, we're at the same issue. So when I say the word consciousness, I don't know why that's inherently objectionable. I just hear you pointing to the ultimate truth. The only thing that is objectionable is the statement that the only thing we know for certain is that we are conscious. Because the implication of a existential ontology that is fundamentally phenomenological and, you know, pertains to these types of categories is that nothing is certain. Like all of our understanding, once it gets put into these words, once it gets put into the words of consciousness is, etc. Like we've already packaged this thing up in a reduced, contingent, conceptual framing that is, afforded to us by our culture, our past, etc. Like we're presupposing a lot when we try to make sense of things in that way. So we can't say that consciousness is the thing that we are certain of. Now, granted, I understand what it's trying to, like, I understand what it's getting at, but I would prefer to just leave it at, you know, we hold the primacy of consciousness. Yeah, so this is the second one. The more parsimonious and logically coherent explanation is that reality is constituted solely by the one thing we know directly, consciousness. Oh, no. Okay, no, he's talking about... I forget where he said the exact... Oh, yeah. He argues that since consciousness is the only thing we know for sure, so this is just what I would not agree with. I mean, granted, I understand what he's trying to say, but like I'm not allowing that statement, because then it allows you to think that it has some say over what our understanding of the physical world ought to be. And that's I think where I'm having beef. I think there's been various presentations and wordings of that idea, right? Cognito ergo sum, but I think the idea I am is the same insight that something appears, or whatever word you would like. There's a quote about these words and concepts being inherently flawed, and whatever you will say will be true and false. You could always interpret certain wordings and see how they are true or false. Yep, true and false depending on interpretation. Right, but when we're talking about this type of truth, then anything, like any postulation is false in that sense. You know, what is true is potential. The being openness to potential. And I mean, I try to make sense of this through predictive processing. This idea that our brain is constantly forward looking or forward interpreting, and it's always oriented towards the future, or expectation. Right. Yeah, various. I mean, yeah, we can interpret something to sound to be true or false, etc. Which is why it's just important to be precise about what we're trying to say, because this is doing a lot of heavy lifting for mind at large here. And his attack on the physical world, like his attack on physicalism, is fueled by this, and so I need to point out where there's a flaw in the buildup here. Talks about both realized and unrealized beings saying, I am the body, but one is correct and one is incorrect. Huh. I'm not quite sure how to understand that, but let's try it. How can I understand? And it points to the distinction between appearance and truth, similar in spirit to the true truths we just discussed, the two I am the body statements. That both the realized and unrealized beings use the same word. So yeah, I guess I'm trying to understand what realized and unrealized means. The unrealized person says I am the body and believes it literally. The realized person may also say I am the body, but they know they are not really the body. They see the body as part of a totality of experience, the self appearing as a body. Right. So I mean, you could say that the unrealized person is making an ontological statement, and then the realized person is making a speculative statement. Or I mean, I guess if they know they're already they know that it's not right. Yeah, no, I would say it's a speculative statement. So I think that Kastrup is making a ontological statement here, and he's giving it he's being the unrealized person by saying this, and then using it as, oh, I'm trying to find it for you. All right, we should not postulate an entirely different and unknowable ontological category. Oh, he argues that since consciousness is the only thing we know for sure, we should not postulate an entirely different and unknowable ontological category, namely a mind-independent material world. Yeah, so right, and you know, I wouldn't push this either. Like, I don't think physicalism requires talking about the physical world in this way, which is what we do in the document. Like, truth is not necessarily the physical world as we talk about in the document. Truth is something that manifests itself in consciousness. You know, consciousness is the primary locus of ontology. Is that how we could use the word locus? Sure. Catalyst? No. I don't know. I don't know what we would use for that, what word we would use, but the source? Primary source? Such a move is metaphysically extravagant, creating the intractable mind-body problem. Okay. So yeah, we get out of this stuff. The physical world for us only exists in our conceptual experience and understanding. And it just so happens to be the case that our understanding of the physical world is such that we know, that we can know, or we can say that it affects our understanding, our conceptual understanding of it. You know, that's not to say that it is the source of ontology or that it is like real in some like ontological sense, but it's more so that it's like a property of our conceptual understanding, that it is non-psychological, that it would be there regardless of whether someone looked at it or not. Okay, we get. Oh, here we go. This is Sam Harris's Guru's Guru. Nice. Okay. I'm gonna say Sri Bhagavan said the Jnani say I am the body. The Ajnani says I am the body. Which one is which? Which one's the realized? I guess we'll figure that one out. What is the difference? I am is the truth. The body is the limitation. The Ajnani limits the I to the body. So Ajnani is the unrealized. I remains independent of the body in sleep. The same I is now in wakeful state. Maybe I just messed that up. We'll see. Though imagined to be within the body, I is without the body. The wrong notion is not I am the body. I says so. The body is insentient and cannot say so. The mistake lies in thinking that I is what I is not. I is not insentient. I cannot be the inert body. The body's movements are confounded with I, and misery is the result. Whether the body works or not, I remains free and happy. The Ajnani's I is the body only. That is the whole error. The Jnani's I includes the body and everything else. Clearly some intermediate entity arises and gives rise to the confusion. All right. I think I'm going to call it there, because this is somewhat difficult to parse unless we spend some time with it. Jnani's very dense, yeah. But yeah, once again, it's also a an interpretive lens. Like there wasn't anything like more or less, objectively true or transcendent about that way of talking about these topics, about phenomenology or a phenomenological ontology. But I'd imagine that that's actually a very effective way to talk about it. It's probably probably an influential way. There is one difference, though. Drum roll. He has a radically different experience of the world. Yeah, I guess so. He has a radically different experience phenomenologically. I guess it would be a good question to understand how our existential phenomenology changes in these states. That said, that's in my mind, that's not an argument that gives, or that's not a point that gives more credence to this person. In my mind, it gives almost less credence, because the point, a lot of the time I make this point where what we're trying to do in philosophy or in our document is to convey information to other people. And so uh, for someone who doesn't experience the world like the majority of the other people, I would be a little bit more skeptical about their ability to communicate certain topics to them, especially as it relates to fundamental ontology. So, I know that's so counter the usual way of thinking about these types of people, but you know, I think it's pretty apt, actually. Once we point out that the experience that they're having is affected by their physiology and not, some external truth. As you could recall, scanning the 40K hour yogi brains, right? Do you agree with this quote? If you want to understand your mind, sit down and observe it. Yes, absolutely. That's it's kind of one of the main takeaways of part one. It's that our ability to get a hold of where we are and who we are and what we can do is to reflect. That said, once you reflect for really long periods of time and to the point where your brain changes, now you are very different than other people. and so, yeah, you would start experiencing the world in a different way. But it's not like you're gaining, like, yeah, this is the difficult part to say, though. It's not like you're gaining like a better and better understanding as you're doing this. Really, I would say it's more apt to say that someone who practices meditation is affecting their brain in such a way that it's easier to reflect on things in the moment. It's easier to manage your emotions or your drives or whatever. It's not that you're like learning more about the transcendent universe or the transcendent truth. It's really that you're just freeing up your mind to pay attention to, whatever you prompt it with, which could be, what could I do in order to achieve this goal? And your mind is going to, you know, give you something more clearly than if you were to have not trained your mind, or if you were to have just done 2 hours of TikTok. To me, these people have done that for 40K and have true insight rather than being drunk on anything, and their words reflect that, in my opinion. Right? Yeah, I think that's just a difference of view that I have. I think where I just wouldn't go to say that their insight is like more true than anyone else's. I think it's more apt to just point out what they've done to their brain, like what has changed in their brain. And that's not to say that that's a bad thing. Like, it's a very, I wish that was me, like I wish I had that level of clarity. And when I say that, I mean, like, I wish my brain was such that I can more clearly reflect on things and manage my emotions, regulate my emotions. The cool thing about the video I just had up is I like kind of connected this idea of paying attention to homeostasis, like as Dr. K was talking about. He was pointing out how meditation can be a way where we get in tune with our internal signals. And so someone who's really practiced in that can probably deal with all kinds of emotions that other people wouldn't be able to deal with, because they're able to perhaps, like, literally, knowingly or unknowingly, make sense of them in a more effective way. It seems you have strong opinions on meditation, as do I, but I have been doing and studying it. I do agree with that. Right. My opinions are all founded in the same like ontological discussion that we're talking about when we're grounding these things in physical mechanisms. I'm leveraging it's really, I'm following what I believe to be like scientific standards, and then I'm drawing implications from what we know. And the issue is that, I literally the fact that I believe that my understanding of this thing being a pen is something that's affected by my physiology, like that has crazy implications on any type of experience we have, where even ones that feel profound or feel like we are transcending in some way. Like it's really our brain is affording us this experience that we genuinely feel like we are somewhere, or we are doing something, we're seeing something. From my experience, it's easy to speculate on the end of the path and the scope, etc. Right. I wouldn't want to speculate as to how that feels, right? Like that wouldn't be something I'm allowed to do. It's very unintuitive for me to consider what it feels like, but it's still under the same, like that's the whole, like this idea that our brain affects our experience is so all-encompassing that regardless of what experience you have, regardless of whether you're schizophrenic and you believe that there's a person standing there, or if you are highly meditated and you believe that you are seeing God, or actually I should say the person who takes the psychedelic believes that they're seeing God. All of these are falling under the same framework of the brain affecting our experience and the feeling of certainty we have about what that experience is. But really, it's only harmful to do so, at least as a practitioner. This is a common idea in meditation. It speaks to the idea that, yeah, it's counterintuitive, and that as a practitioner, you might chase after the wrong thing. Yeah, I mean, I would not, like, when going into meditation, I would not try to assume what I'm going to get to. Like, I'm not going to try to assume where this path would take me, what it would feel like. That said, I understand what's going on. Like, the fact that my brain is changing as I practice, I'm building things in the brain that are affecting how my experience feels in the future. Like, these are fundamental ways of thinking about our experience. Sounds like karma. How I forget how Dr. K described karma, but I felt like it was really intuitive. Like, I'm definitely able to empathize and leverage and employ all of the concepts along the way. It's just the ontological discussion where I then have, like, that's the only place where I have beef. And I, it's this I have the same beef as as I have with people who have these types of religious experiences as people who are religious, and same as people that believe that there's ghosts without the necessary evidence or whatever. Yeah, I don't think we're allowed to do that. I don't think we have the necessary evidence. Okay, let's continue. All right, so to avoid the charge of solipsism, the belief that only one's own mind exists, and to account for the shared objective and law-like nature of reality, Kastrup posits the existence of a single, universal, and transpersonal field of subjectivity. And as I mentioned, you have to do this. This is your way out now of the solipsism. He terms this field mind at large, a nod to Aldous Huxley, or more formally, universal phenomenal consciousness. This universal mind is the sole ontic subject, the stream of subjectivity that underlies all of existence. Right, so the issue is that any idea that comes to our minds about any of these issues, even ideas of the physical world, right? All of these are similarly speculative in some fundamental sense. So the question is, why do we actually care about evidence or science? And that's kind of the discussion we have in the epilogue of the document, which is to point out that science allows us to let us find it, to aggregate anecdotal experience. Now, granted, for things like these experiences, we do see these types of anecdotes arising cross-culturally, and to many people over time as well. I think I do have the. Do I write this actually? Yeah, you know what? I do write this. So this is going to be Consciousness P2. Working through this. We're going to be reading this Thursday. What do I want to do here? To be precise about panpsychism, we could argue that it has immense empirical evidence in the sense that the phenomenological experience is fundamentally empirical. Many people experience and report similar profound experiences, whether psychedelic, spiritual, religious, etc. Not only is this suggested across cultures over time in stories, practices, and ancient texts, there are also multiple studies that found many adults have reported having such an experience. The fact that such experiences appear in many cultures, religious traditions, mystical spiritual paths, as well as in modern secular surveys, suggests there is something that appears repeatedly across time and culture. However, as we mentioned in the previous video, there are also many studies that connect these types of experiences to neural correlates, and crucially, these neural correlates highly suggest why these experiences would feel the way that they do. I should say, and thus why people would report similar experiences. Emotional, overwhelming, open. A growing body of neuroimaging research has identified partially overlapping neural correlates of profound or mystical experiences, particularly involving alterations in the default mode network and global brain connectivity. For example, when the default mode network, which usually acts as a self-regulating filter, loosens its grip, information begins to flow more freely, sensory and emotional signals surge upward, and brain regions that rarely communicate start interacting, which results in intuitive, vivid, and novel experiences. We've got a longer version here. The result is increased crosstalk between networks that typically remain segregated, giving rise to vivid, emotionally charged, and novel forms of experience. In this fluid state, learning may occur as a result. Regions that fire together during the experience begin to wire together, embedding new associations long after the state itself subsides. There are also effects beyond the DMN, with sensory, limbic, and salience regions becoming more active and interconnected, further contributing to this heightened experience. To be clear, it would not be correct to say that these mechanisms are fully understood or that all such experiences share a single neural signature. Different types, for example, drugs versus prayer, near-death states, likely overlap partially but not completely. The point is that we could see clear correlates between subjective experience and neural mechanisms. Many people have pointed out that this is well understood and only acknowledges the easy problems of consciousness, and that's a fair take. This still does not fill in the hard problem of consciousness, and we will get there shortly. All right. Great thing about Buddha's teachings is he doesn't tell you to believe anything. Ehe Pasico? Come and see. To me is why Buddhism is extremely compatible with science. Nice. Yeah, I mean, I think Buddhism is quite compatible with a lot of the stuff that we talk about. The only thing the only time I have beef is when there's ontological statements that that I think could be inferred in such a way that people think stuff that contradicts what the document's trying to say. Because I think it's actually quite practical and useful for people to understand the nuances of the document. So I'm not just trying to cast or break down. It's more so that I think it's more practical and effective to go in one way. But maybe that's really not correct. I guess I'm also trying to abide by the standards of what I think are logical and rational thinking and thought and logic. Represents a core principle of the Buddha's teachings. It is an invitation to verify the truth of the teachings through personal direct experience rather than blind faith. Buddha would always say most practical is don't bother with metaphysics. Wow. Yeah, I would say it depends what we're trying to do with metaphysics. Like, I would say don't bother with trying to make a correct metaphysics, but I would say it's actually quite practical to find a metaphysics that helps you out. It's inherently practical to figure out what is the most practical metaphysics. Check out the poison arrow parable. Was the poison arrow one the two arrow thing that we talked about? The one where you pull out one but not the other, or something like that? The poison arrow parable. Or was that something else? Different to the two arrows. Okay. Can you briefly explain? Teaches that speculative questions about metaphysics are less important than direct practice leading to liberation. Story: a monk told the Buddha he wouldn't practice until he got answers to certain philosophical questions. Okay. So yeah, I guess these questions about metaphysics are looking for clear answers, when obviously if I were asked these questions, I would go into I would become a linguistic philosopher, and I would point out that it depends what we mean. The Buddha replied with this parable: suppose a man is struck by a poisoned arrow. His friends and family want to get the arrow out immediately, but he says, wait before removing it. I need to know who shot me, what his cast was, what kind of bow he used, what feathers are on the arrow, what kind of poison it is. If he insisted on knowing all that before pulling the arrow out, he would die before learning the answers. Right, so I would say the other way we could go about this is something akin to what Dr. K was saying about not needing to use willpower. And he says that what trumps willpower, or what allows you to not have to exert so much effort of pure willpower and discipline, brute force, is understanding more about what's actually going on. So in this case, it would be the question you would want to ask after you got struck by the poisoned arrow is, how can I effectively get this arrow out without killing me, or something like that? So rather than just pulling out, which might be incredibly painful or something, maybe maybe this isn't the best example because you probably just want to get the poisoned arrow out in general. But perhaps there's like a way you can go about this that's that would actually make it easy, So it would be, or perhaps it's something akin to, hey, do you have the numbing agent that will make this not hurt? And then they give them the numbing agent, and then you pull it out, and it's not as bad. I think you're making the same point as the Buddha. Perhaps I am. In the same way, a person asking speculative questions while ignoring the problem of suffering is like the wounded man. They die before finding liberation. What matters is removing the arrow, practicing the path. I guess I'm trying to make a slightly different point, but obviously I'm making a point on a parable. But I think there are. So what I'm trying to get at is there are metaphysical questions that help you perhaps end your suffering. But we're not necessarily oriented against suffering in our document. Like, that's not necessarily what we're doing, except for the fact that we do, by part 3, we do want to end up with a fulfilling and emotionally rewarding life. But it might be a life that is full of responsibility, and therefore a lot of push towards doing things. We're certainly not looking for a life where we just meditate all day, because then we might not do anything. Now, granted, I can't say that for sure, because now I'm putting my own moral framework onto things. But chances are the idea that you can do things in the world that you find are morally necessary for you to do probably is going to, I'd imagine it would lead you to not do something that would make it so that you don't do anything in the world just for the sake of reducing your suffering as much as possible. In that framing, there's something like selfish about doing that. I think the subtle thing here is that this is the only relevant when metaphysics obstructs your practice. Right? Meditation as selfish is misconception, in my opinion. I wouldn't say that meditation is necessarily selfish. If you resigned your life to be just meditating day in and day out, and you weren't to do anything else, then you would succeed in many ways. But like it's, to me, it seems like you want to find a balance. Like meditation is like probably a necessary thing you want to incorporate if you're like, I'm leveraging my own moral framework now. Like, if I wanted to be optimally moral, chances are meditation is morally necessary in my day. But it's not something that I want to overly do because I have to get work done. I need to do things that will actually allow us to maximize the positive I can do in the world. So we have this, like, I have to figure out the balance. Like, I have to figure out what feels good for me. In the document, you claim there is a foundational morality, but you also claim that knowledge is ultimately subjective. How is this possible? If I know something morally, isn't that objective knowledge? So I wouldn't say that that there, yeah, that there is a. So the issue here is the idea that there's a foundational morality. Um, I like it's more so that we're going to point out like a foundational moral practice and not necessarily what the concrete morality is. Like the document is not allowed to say that something like you should open the door for someone or you should not kill. like like the document can't say that those things are necessarily good or bad. It's not allowed to. um the I mean, I guess the closest it can get to saying those are good or bad is saying that if you're trying to achieve your goals here or do anything in the world, doing something that's going to get you in a lot of trouble is probably not going to help you. So therefore, it would not be good. But it's more pragmatic in that sense. It's not thinking about like some objective moral framework. The fundamental moral practice that it can say is, hey, like you understand that you have the capacity to reflect upon what you know, or just something about the world. You have this understanding or this concept of morality as such. Like you understand that there's things that are good and there's things that are bad. And you understand that there's things that you ought to do or ought not to do. You don't know what those things are, but you understand that as a concept. So by the very conceptual definition or understanding that you have about morality, we can like from the ground up, we could pull out a moral prescription that you ought to figure out what you should be doing, like what is moral and what you should be doing. And then the second part is that whatever you come up with, you should do it. Like you now have a moral prescription to do it. So like nothing clear. It's different for each person, but we can build a moral framework from just the idea that we have a moral, like just from the fact that we all understand morality as a concept. We can build up our just like our base moral framework. Now, the question is then, are there certain things that would contribute or help you in figuring out what you should be doing, or helping you do what the things that you should be doing? And that leads to like part 2 stuff where we actually talk about the things that would help you achieve your goals. So regardless of what you find to be your moral responsibility, you have the toolkit that tells you how to do those things. And the question is, if you have a toolkit that shows you how to do the moral things that you think you ought to be doing, then don't you have a moral prescription to do those things? And it's not going to be as clear as that. Like we can't say that you necessarily ought to meditate for a certain amount of time. It would be you ought to figure out how much time you could or might not need to meditate in order to do what you're trying to do. It. And meditation is just one of the many tools. So it's like, how healthy do you think that you need to eat in order to be able to operate in such a way where you actually do the things you think you ought to be doing? It's going to be a practice and a like something that each person has to deal with themselves to figure out what are the tools that they should leverage, how much can they do without this being really difficult for them, yeah, like it's going to be an ongoing thing, that it's going to be a relationship. Like each person has a relationship with morality that the part 3 is going to have to help people work with. But we can't actually point out like, hey, like this is something you ought, or like this clear thing, like like even giving to charity is not something that necessarily the document tells you ought to do. Now, granted, that's like in my moral framework, but I'm not the document. So All right, let's read through these. Uh, Mahayana perspective: you meditate for the benefit of all beings. So this is where it's actually problematic to think about this mind at large thing. Like because we ground our understanding of each person's experience in the physical world, then it does not matter how I feel or whether I meditate onto other people's experiences, unless it helps me, like if it affects my ability to do good onto the rest of the world. So like there's no, like, we can't say that it's just like, if I were to meditate 16 hours a day and then sleep, and I didn't interface with anyone else, then no, it's like we're not allowed to say that that is for the betterment of other people, or at least that's what I would argue. Is there anything more important than purifying the mind? It depends how long you purify the mind. It's like, if that's all you did, then you wouldn't be able to act. Like, perhaps you think that is the, like, I'm not saying like that in a negative way, but like perhaps someone thinks that's the most moral thing that they could do, and therefore the document isn't like, yeah, this is coming from me. This isn't coming from the document here. The document can't tell you that you're doing the wrong thing, because that's only between you and whatever, God or your mind or the universe itself. I would argue that if you're only meditating, then you aren't actually affecting the rest of the world. Unless, of course, you leverage your newfound calm mind and you use it effectively. And then in my mind, I'm thinking, okay, how much, like, what is that balance? Like, because like, doing things that I think are going to help the world out is going to take a lot of work. So I can't meditate all day. I got to do those things. That's my opinion. You're putting quite a ceiling on it. Low ceiling. Does that line up with 40K hour yogi brains? I don't know how. Like, the question. Yeah, I mean, I'm in my mind, like in my framework, I'm such a consequentialist that I'm gonna consider what have the yogis done to other people, like, and I'm guessing a lot of good, and I'm just wondering, could I do more than that? Like, could I do more if I didn't achieve 40K hours? And my guess is yes, because I think it takes a lot of time and effort to actually do the things that I want to do. Granted, I'm like a weird person for effectively committing my life to the stuff we're going to be doing on this channel, and I don't think it's going to stop with this document. I want to do more after that. I'm quite ambitious in that regard. But yeah, obviously, there's yogis that do spread the word in some sense to other people, and so they do help a lot. Like, they do actually have like a positive effect on a lot of people. But I'm thinking big numbers. I'm thinking empire business. Can someone be wrong about the moral goals they established from the framework? It depends what we mean by wrong. So yeah, there is like a difficult discussion that we're going to have where it's like, how do we deal with the fact that we could go in any direction in what we believe to be good? Like, really, the way that I see it is our conscience is changing. Like, what our conscience yells at us about changes over time. So, not to get overly dark, but people that end up doing terrible, terrible things, or at least what we believe to be terrible, terrible things, they get to a point where their conscience doesn't yell at them when they do those things. So how can we create like a not a lighthouse. What would be a good, like a, how can we create some type of North Star for ourselves so that we know when we're not going in the direction of, you know, what we want to be doing? And but that's similarly something that you have to deal with yourself. And granted, I haven't thought through how best to do that, but that is something we have to deal with, so that even though you might think what was good or what was bad now is good or bad in the future, how can we make sure that you can check yourself whether or not you've gone astray in some sense? And what would that mean, right? That's the issue now. If we don't have some objective morality, now there is this chance that we get cast astray, and you know, we have to deal with that. And if so, by what standard are they wrong if the moral document doesn't state what is and what isn't wrong? Right? It's going to have to be a practice, though. Like, it's not, the document's not going to be able to give you the North Star. The document's going to have to explain what you can do to create a North Star for yourself. And that's something that I'm going to have to do a lot of research into, figure out what that might look like. But that's what we're dealing with. Like, that's all we have. Now, it could, like, part of that practice could be find someone you trust, find a figure whose morals you trust, and there's a North Star for you. And maybe you get a bunch of different North Stars, and you keep up with them. Perhaps it's a standard of the reasoning that's required for you to feel like what you believe now is okay, and even though it's different than your North Star. Like, what is the standard of reasoning? Like, what should you be able to do in order to justify your changing of opinions here? And granted, keep in mind that while you're doing this, you're going to have confirmation bias on your current understanding. So there's a lot to look out for there. But we have to deal with these very difficult problems. But I think we're gonna deal with them the most appropriate way I could possibly think of. I guess that's not saying much, but yeah, we cannot discount our dynamic understanding, and the fact that ontology is I gotta figure. I always start with ontology now. That consciousness is primary for ontology. I should just say that. I guess an important layer for me is that carrying to the next life. Okay, but you don't think if you create some peace, love, wisdom within yourself, you benefit others? Right, like, I mean, this is just a very much physicalist understanding that I have, where I don't transfer something to others unless I actually interact with the others. So I would say that if I were to meditate a lot, and that would actually help out my relationship with someone, like especially people that are in close relationships, or like long-term relationships with a significant other, whatnot, like, it is very much beneficial to meditate, because it will affect how good of a partner you are with that other person. So you're benefiting other people. But if you were not in such a relationship, and you were just a nomad, and you were to go out into the fields, and you were to just stay secluded, and you would never come back and actually interface with other people, then I don't think that, like, I don't think that there's some mind at large where you're somehow transmitting that type of progress. And I believe that according to our physical understanding of the world. So the idea of the next life, unfortunately, I don't think our understanding of science allows us to make. I don't think we're allowed to think that we have a next life under the rigor and standards of science. And that's kind of what we are. That's our rock, kind of. Who is ever truly separate from others, even if they spend a month meditating? Okay, yeah. I mean, if you spend a month meditating all day and then come back, then yeah, you could easily justify that. But I'll chill. I don't mean to be contentious and stack message. No, you're good. Um, Consciousness is primary as an ontology. What a strange thing to say as a materialist. Yeah, no, because yeah, we have like once again we have we have a conceptual understanding about a physical world, and there's properties of that physical world that are very much important for us, but the very experience of that meaning comes from consciousness. Like we it's disclosed in our conscious experience, so that's why consciousness has primacy for ontologically speaking. But it's when I talk about ontology, I'm talking about something that is subjective, right? Like this is each person's like each person is dealing with different meaning essentially. Like it's not that when I say that consciousness is primary as an ontology, I don't mean that consciousness as some external thing or as some universal thing is affecting each person in the same way. I'm pointing out that for each person, their existential ontology is phenomenological. Right, but the point is almost everyone does come back. Sounds like dogma. Right. I guess I'm making a sorry, I got contentious again. No worries. Um, right. Perhaps I was making a also I don't quite know the standard practices of the high meditators. Perhaps I was making a what's the word for when you like exaggerate something for the sake of for the sake of making a specific logical point. um I don't remember that word, but it's a pretty common word. um all right, what you just described is Kant's transcendental idealism. Uh-oh, I don't like the idea of transcendental in there, but let's all right. We can know things only as they appear to us, not as they are in themselves. Right. So yeah, if we were to go into the weeds, what Brandom does, and I would highly recommend this book if you're really interested in this type of thing. Um, Brandon points out. Okay, actually, can we actually get this in here? Can you explain the gap that Brandon identifies and remedies within a spirit of trust that's in between phenomena and nomina? Because yeah, Hegel. I think he's leveraging Hegel for this, but there's this idea that that there, we could think about the things that appear to us as separate and as different than the things in themselves. So this is where people get into the issue with the physical world, where they think that the physical world is something that is ontologically prior, or something that is like ontologically true and transcendent, and then there's this gap, and we only get the representation, and that isn't what I'm trying to point out. Okay, the transcendental part refers not to something mystical, but to the conditions that make experience possible. Okay. Right. So yeah, I think Brandon kind of builds on this, and he points out, is it conceptual idealism? I don't know. I'm going to read through this because I think it's really important. I should read Sam Harris's spirituality book. He explains some non-dual stuff from secular perspective. I probably should, though. I don't trust Sam with this type of discussion as well, because he will push that science is like, you know, some ontological priority. And granted, I understand what he's trying to say. Like, it's very important that we honor empirical truths, quote unquote. But that's like that's a different discussion. Hey, read the rest on transcendental idealism. All right. So the mind actively shapes experience through its own structures, right? This is all good stuff. These structures make experience possible, but they also limit it. I like that. Transcendental refers not to something mystical, but to the conditions that make experience possible, right? The idealism part, it's called idealism because reality as we know it is mind dependent. It exists for us only as it appears under these mental conditions. Yeah, this is where we have to be clear about what we mean it exists. And, you know, obviously I'm pointing out that meaning is disclosed to us, like, phenomenologically. However, Kant is not saying that nothing exists independently of the mind. He allows for things in themselves, the ultimate reality, but insists we can never know them directly, only their appearances as filtered through our faculties. So this is the thing that I would have beef with coming from Brandom. This idea that nomina exists independently of the mind. That, I think, is not, that's not phenomenologically right, and I don't think that's right according to the embodied cognitivists. Embodied cognition scientists. Okay, so I'll read the Brandon book. There's a video I think you'll be interested in, Why I'm Not a Scientific Realist, by Kane B. He has a PhD in the philosophy of science. I'm so unconvinced by that point of view, unfortunately, that I don't think I can afford spending. Oh, this is a video. I thought you said it was a book. Okay. Perhaps that. Yeah, it depends how long this video is, but I'll definitely add it. Do you think I could just search for it? Aha. 42 minutes? We could do that. Not right now, but we could do that. Oh, no. Key distinction, right. The goal, Kant's aim was to reconcile rationalism and empiricism. Okay. Robert Brandom, in A Spirit of Trust 2019, reinterprets and reconstructs Hegel's project, not Kant's directly, but Kant as mediated through Hegel, in a pragmatist, inferentialist way. The gap you're referring to, the one between phenomena and noumena, is the very Kantian gap that Hegel and Brandom after him both aim to overcome. The Kantian gap, phenomena versus noumena. In Kant, as you summarized, the world as it appears, structured by our cognitive faculties, and then noumena, the world as it is in itself, which can never be known. This sets up an unbridgeable epistemic gap between the conditions of our knowing and the reality beyond those conditions. We can only know appearances, never things in themselves. That gap safeguards empirical realism, but creates a deep duality between mind and world, concept and object, norms of reason and facts of nature. Hegel's response, overcoming the divide. Hegel's project in the phenomenology of spirit is to repair the dualism by showing that the opposition between appearance and reality is itself a stage within experience, not an absolute separation. Through the development of self-consciousness and mutual recognition, spirit comes to understand that what it takes as the world and what it takes as itself are both moments in a self-developing rational whole. So we could easily, like, reality here could easily be connected to this whole universal truth, or Heidegger's authentic being. Like, we can think about it in that way. Like, granted, that's not the way Hegel's going in. And then, obviously Hegel has his own like way of making sense of this through the thesis, antithesis, and synthesis. Through the development of self-consciousness and mutual recognition, spirit comes to understand that what it takes as the world and what it takes as itself are both moments in a self-developing rational whole. So this is how we can also understand the fact that our understanding is quite dynamic. In short, there is no unknowable nominal realm. Rather, what happens, or what appears, phenomena, is spirit's own activity made explicit to itself. So this is Hegel's self-consciousness. Reality is not beyond experience. It is immanent within the processes of understanding. Okay, I think we could... Brandon takes up Hegel's project in pragmatist terms, focusing on discursive normativity, right? So he gets into the whole recognitive community stuff. Yeah. I mean, Thomas Lodger, definitely don't feel the need to actually read that book. I mean, it's really long, and I mean, I think it is amazing, but it might take a lot of time. All right, let's jump back here. Let's keep going. Because this is literally where we started today. I think I keep stun locking myself. In this model, the world continues to exist even when no individual person is observing it, because it persists as an ongoing pattern of mental activity and excitation within mind at large. The stable laws of physics are not laws governing dead inert matter, but rather the consistent and regular patterns of behavior of this universal mentation. I've never seen that word in my life. Mental activity, wow. This concept serves as a similar function to Bishop Berkeley's mind of God, which was invoked to explain the persistence of the unobserved world, but Kastrup frames it in secular naturalistic terms that are more palatable to a modern scientific sensibility. Mind at large is not a supernatural deity intervening in the world. It is the world in its intrinsic experiential nature. Okay, altars of a cosmic mind, the nature of individuality. Perhaps Kastrup's most original and striking contribution to idealist thought is his explanation for the existence of multiple seemingly separate centers of consciousness to solve the problem of how the one universal consciousness becomes the many individual minds. He introduces a powerful metaphor drawn from psychiatry, dissociative identity disorder. He posits that individual living beings are dissociated alters of mind at large, analogous to the distinct, mutually unaware personalities that can coexist within a single human mind afflicted with DID. According to this model, each living organism, including every human being, is a localized whirlpool in the broader stream of universal consciousness. This process of dissociation creates a boundary around a segment of the universal mind, giving rise to a private personal field of awareness and the powerful illusion of being a separate, discrete self contained within a body. This metaphysical dissociation explains a key feature of our experience, the privacy of our own thoughts and the inability to directly access the inner lives of others. We are, in this view, walled off from the rest of mind at large and from each other by our own dissociative boundary. The effectiveness of this particular analogy is central to the popular appeal of Kastrup's philosophy. Idealism has historically struggled to provide an intuitive explanation for the multiplicity of minds. The DID metaphor, however, is a strategic masterstroke. It takes a known, if rare, psychological phenomenon and scales it up to a metaphysical principle. This provides a ready-made conceptual model for how a single unified consciousness can contain multiple disjointed centers of subjectivity, each with its own private experiences. This allows Kastrup to bypass centuries of complex philosophical debate on the principle of individuation and present a solution that is immediately graspable and memorable, even if speculative. The analogies are therefore not mere illustrations. They are the primary argumentative vehicles that carry his highly counterintuitive philosophy into the public consciousness, translating abstract ontology into concrete, relatable imagery. So the thing that I would ask for, of course, is how does he bridge the hard problem of how would we say this? Universal idealism. The hard problem of actually pointing out how the universal consciousness affects the brain. Because, I'd imagine he would agree that there's stuff going on in the brain that affect the way that we experience. Like he would believe in the correlates. So how does, like, where's the, like, there's a hard gap still conceptually between what he's pointing out and how it actually interfaces with the physical parts of the brain. Or how is it supplying the juice that we'd have to also, he'd also have to fill in the hard problem of consciousness. Like you can't just point out that there is consciousness. Like you can't, is it begging the question? No, what's the something that concluding with the premise? What's that logical fallacy? Beg the premise? That's two different ones. Conclude the premise, begging the question. The premises assume the conclusion without supporting it. Maybe it is begging the question. I don't know. I'm gonna have to do a deeper job. I don't think I have to spend too much time going down this road, honestly. And I don't think it's going to be necessarily productive for us unless we are having discussions with thinkers similar to Kastrup here, which I don't think we need to do. This allows Kastrup to bypass centuries of complex philosophical debate on the principle of individuation. Okay. The analogies are therefore not mere illustrations. They are the primary argumentative vehicles that carry his highly counterintuitive philosophy into the public consciousness, translating abstract ontology into concrete, relatable imagery. The physical world is a dashboard. With consciousness established as the sole ontological primitive, the status of the physical world must be reevaluated. In analytic idealism, the physical world we perceive, including our own brains, bodies, and the entire universe, is not the fundamental reality. Instead, it is the extrinsic appearance of mental processes within mind at large, as they are perceived from our limited dissociated perspective. Matter is what the inner subjective life of the universe looks like when viewed from the outside across a dissociative boundary. Yeah, so that you'd also have to ask, how do you make sense of the fact that people arrive at similar but different understandings? Right, like we would want to similarly know, like we should hold idealist perspectives through the same rigor that they hold the hard problem of consciousness, or hold to the hard problem of consciousness. Because once again, what we're looking for is pragmatic, like what we're trying to find what we can actually leverage here. And our philosophy is one in which conceptualizations of things are fundamentally pragmatic. Like we're not trying to point out the way that things actually are. That's not how language works. We're trying to communicate something akin to what we feel that we understand. And yeah. Okay, Kastrup uses another powerful analogy to explain this. The physical world is a kind of species-specific dashboard or user interface, just as the pilot interacts with a dashboard of instruments that represent the complex state of the airplane and its environment. Here we go again. We interact with a perceptual world that represents the underlying mental reality of mind at large. The instruments are not the reality itself. The dial showing altitude is not the actual altitude, but they provide a functional, simplified representation that allows the pilot to navigate. Similarly, a brain scan showing firing neurons is not the cause of a thought. It is the image of that thought process as it appears to an external observer. The physical world is real as a perception, but it should not be mistaken for the thing in itself, which is irreducibly mental. Yeah, so we'd have to point... Yeah. So I'm guessing the question of how do, when two people see the same thing, how do we make sense of that? And you'd have to say it's supplied by the universal consciousness. If you're going to hold this, if you're going to hold that the brain isn't actually affecting what we're thinking. So this, the way that he's talking, he's actually throwing neural correlates away, I think, which now we're like, as far as I'm concerned, we're out of the solar system. We're not off this planet. We're gone. So yeah, that's difficult because yeah, we'd have to ask why do people end up with different experiences of the same thing? How can two people interpret the same thing similarly? And if they say but they're not interpreting a thing that's external to them, they're just having mental they're just having mental experiences, then I would say, how do people experience the same things, seemingly the same things then? How do we make sense of that? How do we make sense that, the place that I'm in is going to look similar to each person, or at least each person's going to behave as if this thing looks similar? And we're just going to get into this very difficult to parse discussion. And I don't think I'm too interested in that. All right, the case for idealism, arguments from science and philosophy. This section analyzes the evidentiary and argumentative basis Kastrup constructs for analytic idealism. His approach can be characterized as a two-front strategy. First, a philosophical deconstruction of materialism, arguing for its logical and explanatory failures. And second, a reinterpretation of empirical findings from modern science, particularly quantum mechanics and neuroscience, which he contends are not only compatible with idealism, but actively support it. Oh, man. Well, I guess we have to do this. All right, Kastrup's case begins with a systematic philosophical indictment of the dominant materialist paradigm, which he attacks on three main grounds: logical incoherence, lack of parsimony, and explanatory failure. So logical incoherence. He argues that materialism is ultimately self-refuting. The materialist worldview posits that what we experience is not reality itself, but a brain-constructed copy or internal model of an external mind-independent world. This is outdated, by the way. The most contemporary, or I guess more contemporary thought that contemporary embodied cognition thought is that this isn't the case. It's not that we are making representations of neutral stimuli, and this is where predictive processing can kind of be intuitive in this sense. Like we are literally primed to look for specific information. So I'm not getting a bunch of photons and then turning it into a pen. I'm looking for things. Our brain is looking for information it understands, and when it doesn't understand something, it doesn't just apply a label to it. It's slowly getting there. It's slowly changing its we could say its model of the world, its expected model, its predictive model. Um, but it's not just like taking everything in and then creating representations. Now you could say that the very signals that your brain is getting. So this is like what Damasio does. Damasio describes the mappings that are that is literally the brain activation that's happening. We could think of as representations of state of some sort, but it's very abstract when he's talking about that stuff. So it's not to be misunderstood as like a information from a machine. The thing that's really so this was actually really cool that I thought about this last night, and I'm attributing this to my friend who pointed this out, or at least I had a discussion with my friend Jago, who comes on here every once in a while. We were having a discussion about the difference between digital and analog computers, and he highlighted the fact that in analog systems, there's not a discrete set of possibilities. There's a continuous space where you can get all kinds of, you can get an infinite amount of possibilities between two set points. What 2 bounds. When we think about the brain, we need to think about it as a analog system. Now, granted, when we can interpret neural activity, it looks digital in some sense. Like it looks like we're dealing with things that are either on or off. But we have to keep in mind that these things that are on and off are constantly changing in response to a lack of activation, all kinds of other physiological mechanisms that are surrounding it. Like these are very complex systems that aren't easily attributable to like a digital process. So this is why it's very difficult to pinpoint what it might mean for the brain to like have a representation in neural activity. Like this is a highly difficult thing to map, which is why we're only now starting to see neural correlates specifically involving brain activity and like aspects of our experience. And granted, like I can't empathize with the idea that because science has not been able to do something yet, therefore it can't. When we're so early in the development of science, there's so much that we can figure out. I think it's just because people think that we've discovered like all the matter in our general world. We've like I think people just kind of assume that we've come up with all the laws of physics, etc., when we haven't. Like we're still looking. Yeah, we certainly haven't even scratched the surface of stuff we're going to find with the brain. And we're building tools that are going to enable significantly more rapid development, more rapid exploration and discovery. All right. If this is true, then all of our knowledge, including the scientific theories that led to the materialist conclusion, is merely a feature of this internal and potentially unreliable model. Right. So, by the way, this is kind of fine. Like, if we're going to abstractly think about our understanding in this way, then yeah, I would agree that our models are unreliable. There's like when we start thinking about reliability, so I should say they're like fundamentally ontologically unreliable. But when we start talking about reliability, now we can talk about what it means for humans to negotiate on meanings or conceptualizations, what it would mean for a human to butt up against the physical world and how that would affect their understanding of what's happening. and then also for us to discuss what it would mean for us to codify information into books. And granted, we're not like codifying some objective static information. People infer from anything, from so when we write down even clear sentences that explain what the laws of physics are, different people are going to infer different things from them. But by being more precise in what we're trying to say, we can create a system in which we all kind of get to a very close, you could think about it as like a close range of understandings. Like they're pragmatically similar enough that, when people say certain things, that other people can agree, or they can say, that sounds right or isn't right. This is why it's so important that we have our discussion of the developing stand. What was it? What do we call it? This developing standards of method of science. The developing authority of method. Right. So this is pointing out how over time what we did consider to be logical or rational changed, and it you could say it quote unquote strengthened, but obviously that's a retrospective view. All right. Lack of parsimony. I keep having to do this. Extreme unwillingness to spend money or use resources. Therefore, if materialism is right, we have no good reason to trust the thinking that led us to believe in materialism in the first place. Right. So I think I kind of just went on that, but the other part of the story is like, how do we trust certain ideas that we think about, and we have this is where we have to make explicit to ourselves the standards with which we should use, because obviously when I think something is true, like when I think that this is a pen and I have that experience of certainty, and when I think some other thing is true, I have a similar experience of certainty, perhaps with different conviction. Like I have to navigate that. Like I have to figure out what to do about that, and when I should be, like, what aspects of this experience ought to make me think that my experience of certainty is not reliable enough. And that's that's something that we have to deal with. That's something each person has to deal with. That's something that we have to talk about in part 2, when we're trying to identify our goals. All right, lack of parsimony. Materialism, according to Kastrup, is metaphysically cumbersome. It needlessly postulates two fundamentally different ontological categories, matter and mind, and then creates the insoluble hard problem of explaining how one can possibly arise from the other. Idealism, by contrast, is more parsimonious because it postulates only one fundamental category. Yeah, I mean, this sounds good. It just, I don't think it works. Also, I don't think that you need to make the case that the physical world is like a ontological category. Explanatory failure. The most significant failure of materialism, in Kastrup's view, is its ability to explain the primary datum of all experience, subjective experience, or qualia. Wait, is he now leveraging the hard problem after dissolving it? Or I guess he's pointing out that the hard problem only exists in a framework where you start with materialism as an ontological category. So the question is, what does it mean to be a failure? While neuroscience can explain the structure, function, and correlations associated with with mental states, it cannot, this is the error, explain why there is an inner qualitative field to those states at all. It cannot. This is like the assumption that we're done, that science is finished, and it's already failed. Materialism can explain the mechanics of a brain. Okay. I think we got to just bounce. I think I've gotten to the point where we've seen too many red flags that I got to just bounce here. I know that's probably not the most respectable thing for me to do. Oh man, the way that I see it is, unfortunately, we just have, unfortunately and fortunately, we have like multiple mountains in front of us. We have so much work we have to do for this project. There's so many things we have to look into. There's so many things we have to learn, etc. At some point, we're going to have to just cut our losses. Not cut our losses, but maybe cut our losses. Yeah, cut our losses. No, that's not the right way of saying it, because cut our losses means that we have had losses and that we're stopping them. But really, it's the potential for losses in the sense that, perhaps people can say that I haven't spent enough time entertaining or exploring a different theory. And yeah, at some point we have to accept the risk. Yeah, we're going to have to accept the risk, and we're going to have to go forward, because it's just more beneficial for us at this point to just move ahead. Unfortunately, I don't think we're finding a way of thinking that's like commensurate with what we're talking about, or I don't think we're finding like unfortunately, I don't think we're finding like a thinker or a figure with whom it would be beneficial for us to coordinate or collaborate for the sake of our project here. So the brain is a filter, evidence from neuroscience and altered states. Are we going to just talk about the same stuff? Okay, yeah, maybe it would be interesting for us to... Oh, I do want to continue the discussion we had yesterday about the... Oh, I need to check Discord as well, because I think... Oh, I forget who it was exactly. It was either Thomas, and I'm not sure if you're still here, or it was someone else from yesterday, but I'll check that out. Okay, we've got controversially Marshall's evidence from quantum mechanics to support his idealist framework. He argues that many of the long-standing paradoxes and spooky findings of quantum mechanics cease to be puzzling if one abandons the assumption of a mind-independent material world. Okay. In a specific interpretation, the unobserved world exists as ripples of probabilities within the universal stream of mind at large, governed by Schrodinger's equation. The act of observation by a dissociated alter does not magically create reality, but rather collapses one of these superposed possibilities into a single definite experience through a process of amplification inherent to the localized psyche. I probably don't understand this stuff well enough. I gotta learn more. So like what? I'm starting to forget that word again. Entanglement. What entanglement like actually entails? In my mind, if someone's in a room with me and I see something, and they're we're like literally next to each other, then they don't have to see that thing for my seeing it to be entangled. But even that, I think, is not an appropriate way to think about this topic, because I think observation doesn't necessarily work according to my conscious experience. There's more apt ways to think of the actual observation than my experience. So that's another thing where I don't know if this is even appropriate. I don't know. We gotta get back to that at some point. It's not that important. We already went through our quantum consciousness discussion. It doesn't really have an effect unless you use it as evidence for idealism here. All right, the brain is filter. Evidence from neuroscience and altered states in the domain of neuroscience. Kastrup challenges the mainstream production model of the brain, the idea that the brain generates consciousness. Instead, he advocates for the filter or transmission hypothesis, which posits that the brain's primary role is to localize and filter the broader. Yep. As evidence of this counterintuitive view, he points to a pattern of empirical science findings where a reduction in brain activity is... Okay, so we're doing the same game here. Reduction in brain activity is correlated with a significant expansion of conscious awareness. Man, this is like the least compelling argument. And then how could he possibly leverage physical evidence for his framework? I'm probably missing something, like in terms of how he can do that. That said, I don't think it's worth the effort to figure that one out. That puzzle. Reviving the canon. All right, we got to bounce. The public philosopher, influence, advocacy, and the Essentia Foundation. Okay, key publications. A mission to shift the paradigm. All right, unfortunately, we're going to be competing. Kastrup to shift the paradigm. Beyond the Academy. New media. Where was the project? The foundation. Stated mission is to challenge the cultural dominance of metaphysical materialism and promote idealism as the most plausible explanatory model for reality. Yikes. This would be like a final boss almost. Because he's probably super well equipped. All right, section 5, critical reception. Direct and sustained engagement remains sparse. His work is more frequently discussed in journals and forums dedicated to consciousness studies, parapsychology, and the philosophy of mind, rather than in top-tier general philosophy publications. This relative academic silence can be interpreted in several ways. Critics might see it as a tacit dismissal of his ideas as being outside the bounds of serious philosophical consideration. Conversely, supporters might view it as evidence of the field's dogmatic adherence to materialism and its unwillingness to engage with fundamental challenges to its own assumptions. This is scoring high on the gurometer. This is one of the flags, the guru flags. A third possibility is that Kastrup's strategic focus on non-traditional publication venues and public outreach has simply placed his work outside the typical channels of academic discourse. This seems a little more realistic. All right, the materialist counter-offensive. All right, let's get out of here. Oh, within non-materialism. While both idealism and panpsychism agree that consciousness is a fundamental aspect of reality, they differ profoundly on the status of the physical world. For panpsychists, the physical world as described by physics is ontologically fundamental. Their claim is that these fundamental physical entities are intrinsically conscious, possessing simple forms of experience. And then idealism here. Consciousness is the sole fundamental reality. Yeah, we got to just bounce. We got to get out of this party. So we got invited to a party where they're just banging on what would be particularly off-putting. I don't know. They're just breaking furniture or something like that. I'm trying not to be too disrespectful here. While Kastrup argues that his theory has greater explanatory power for existing data, critics question whether it makes novel, unambiguous, falsifiable predictions that would clearly distinguish it from a sufficiently complex version of physicalism or other rival theories. The theory is adept at re-explaining known phenomena, but its predictive power remains a subject of debate. Right. All right. Yeah, these are the same things that we've been dealing with. Implications and conclusions. All right, let's bounce. Let's actually do some of these fun videos that he's got. Not this one.
Not identify with it. When I perceive it, I do not think that I am it. But my perception of this object is in the flow of my subjective experiences. That is undeniable, and that's all that can be inferred and said from perception. Perception is not direct evidence for a world.
All right. I think it's going to be the same stuff. I like this music. It's like Harry Potter music. Because we cannot change reality by merely wishing it to be different, it's clear that reality is outside consciousness. So this is... Okay, I see. Okay, so yeah. All right. We gotta balance.
We've learned in school.
Okay.
Schopenhauer was the first.
I think we should just go to this
The
one.
only thing I would say, if you want to hear anything from me that may help, is try to pay attention.
Yo, Daniel N, what's good? The Manifold. That's something to aspire to be.
Especially when life really kicks you in the teeth. Take a step back, take stock, and just pay attention. You don't need to force an answer.
I think this is phenomenal advice.
It's like, oh, I will get disappointed if I pay attention and yet I don't conclude anything. No, just pay attention. Just be with it without the goal of trying to figure anything out immediately. Just stay with life. Pay attention to it. Be with it without expectations, without deadlines, without that hidden negotiation with the universe. Like, yeah, I will pay attention to you, but you got to give me an answer within the next.
Let's actually gank this. This is pretty great. This is going to be a part 2 ism. Yeah, where do we want to put this? At some point, or somewhere in here, we have mindfulness. I thought it would be up here. Maybe it's part of openness. Perhaps we can entertain the tool of simply paying attention without any expectation. That's kind of the mindful meditation mantra, but it's not necessarily the mindfulness mantra. Actually, you know what? I shouldn't have said that. I think mindfulness meditation goes in many different directions, even though there's obviously the very popular one of try to not pay attention to any specific thing, which is an expectation. Yo, Stoicism is a good idea. I agree. I have a recommendation for how the self emerges, but I don't know if you're taking recommendations related to that. For how the self emerges. I guess perhaps. Yo, you know, what's good? What kind of discussion is that pointing to, Energy Dompter? And also, welcome back.
Next year, right? Otherwise, it's not. No, none of that. Just be present to what's happening. That's what I naturally
Stop, collaborate, and
listen. I discovered much later in my life that this is not natural for everyone. You know, I, like everybody else, have the tendency to think that what applies to me applies to everybody else. All right? I have always had that tendency. My friends started alerting me for the fact that this is not so when I was already in my 30s. That my friends noticed. Like, you think everybody's like you? That it's not quite like. I mean, I know people have talent I don't have because they're very obvious to me. But I thought everybody was. Anyway, it's clear to me now that it's not natural for everybody to pay attention. So if you want to do something that doesn't come naturally to you, I would point to you to the possibility of paying more attention than you're naturally inclined to do. But to me, that's what did the trick. I mean, it it cost 2 near suicides. I don't wish that for anyone. But at the end, it did the thing. It did the job. Here I am, happier than I have ever been since my father died.
There's many people asking, they want to know more. What do you mean by paying attention, Bernardo? What are you paying attention to? And there's different people proposing.
This is all chill. I feel like this is stuff that we find in homeostasis and just other discussions of cognitive science. Self is not a simple substance or soul, but an emergent pattern, a strange loop of self-reference within a representational system. And then, there's also a discussion about what we're talking about when we're talking about the self, where is it simply this more like unconscious idea that we have ownership over the meaning that we are experiencing, or which is like, that's more of like an existential discussion, or is it this like concrete objective idea of like who we are determinately, like my traits and my identity and who I am and what I can do, etc. That's a little more that's probably a little more in the realm of what this is talking about, where we are concretely representing ourselves.
Is it mindfulness? Is it one thing or the other? But
no, it's just that. It's really not complicated. It's being present to life and self as things happen to you. This happened today. How did that make me feel? How does that make me feel right now? And what does that do to others? It's mainly asking the questions and not forcing answers. I never got an answer. I just couldn't help but pay attention to life, to what happens in the world, to the subtle organization of life that Jung would have called synchronicities. But synchronicities tend to be discrete moments in Jungian definition.
All right, this is all good stuff.
help run, but
The ultimate purpose. What was I? Yeah, someone else talks about useful hallucinations as like their way of viewing this, and it might be Anil Seth. Could I even do useful hallucination? Yeah, I guess, yeah, it's probably the same concept here. We're all hallucinating all the time. When we agree about our hallucinations, we call it reality. Nice.
Anesthesia, it's a modern kind of magic. It turns people into objects, and then we hope back again into people. And in
Bernardo. Onion Helmet, unfortunately, I think today might be the last Bernardo day that we need to do on this channel. Unfortunately. We got through a good amount more of the larger research response from Gemini, and yeah, I don't think it would be helpful for us to spend a lot of time with that framing. If I could find.
We've learned in school that reality is made of atoms, microscopic building blocks.
Yeah, what was it really? It's the way that. So yeah, I mean, similar to the panpsychism discussion, we really are not in a position where we are allowed to talk about a mind at large in a plausible way. Similar to like the alters, this is another type of filter theory, which I think he has somewhere. here. Yeah, I think, and there were a few premises that I pointed out that yeah, I think just steer us in a wrong direction. So yeah, unfortunately, this isn't commensurate with our document at all. Unfortunately. And then these are the very arguments that we are, I think, equipped to respond to. And some of these are like logical fallacies, like the explanation failure. Yeah, I think just the perspectives are between analytic idealism and the stuff that we've been pursuing is just it's so drastically different that it wouldn't be beneficial for us to spend much time there, especially since there's not a significant amount of evidence that he's got for it. Granted, he makes logical arguments, like he points out why things would make sense logically if that were to be the case, but they're not actually grounded in anything that could be falsifiable. So they're more like semantic logic arguments, which anyone can make. It's just once we get to the semantic logic stuff, it's just whether or not you're compelled or not. Yeah.
So the only thing
but I do like these videos, these general advice questions. Emphasize emergence. Yeah, this is all good stuff, I think. Penrose's critique strongly rejects the idea that consciousness, and particularly understanding or self-awareness, can be explained by formal self-reference alone. Okay. I mean, that seems fine. On the incompleteness theorem, but it interprets it differently from Hofstadter. Gödel shows that in any formal system rich enough to express arithmetic, there are true statements that the system cannot prove. All right, we got to not deal with this incompleteness theorem. This is a semantic nightmare. Human mathematicians, however, can see the truth of such statements. Therefore, human understanding exceeds what any... All right. Hofstadter's strange loop is purely formal and computational, a simulation of self-reference. But self-reference within a formal system cannot produce understanding. It can only produce more symbol manipulation. Yeah. We can only conceptualize what our understanding is, but we're only ever getting symbol manipulation or the activation of these representations in the moment, representations of what our understanding is. It's not like the experience we have is our understanding. It's that we can conceptualize that we understand. Like we're leveraging this idea of understanding to make sense of the things we experience in the moment. Consciousness involves non-computable insight. Right. Okay. Yeah, I don't think this is another one where it's like we got invited to a party where two people are arguing over whether pizza is good or not. Like at some point, we just got to be like, all right, you guys seem good, and let's bounce. Lost all respect for Kastrup when he misinterpreted fMRI EEG data from a psychedelics paper and refused to acknowledge his mistake. Did he do that? But when the scientists behind the paper is that something that happened? Because it did say that he had the same argument that Alex made, which was that when I wonder if Alex has been seeing a lot of Bernardo, but he saw Gemini thought it was necessary to make it clear that some of the evidence that Bernardo's used towards his framework was the fact that the decline of brain activity led to the increase of conscious experience or openness, whatever. And yeah, we've gone through that. I don't like a lot of this language. I don't know what it means for a high level loop to be real. For example, yeah, I agree, Daniel. It's very difficult to make like ontological statements like that. I mean, granted, we are reading like a ChatGPT response, but yeah, we need, I guess, generally speaking, it's always good to have precision on what we are actually trying to say and what we mean by real and stuff like that. When we're talking about high level loops, though, chances are he's grounding it in transient states. And you know what? Maybe does attractor states, is that a specifically neural thing? Maybe not. Okay. Do people just usually talk about like neural ensembles or neural networks? Can we get a video here? No, this is talking about probability. Oh, can we see? What is happening in this video? Oh, on wearables. Nice. All right, we gotta figure out the language here. I think it's referring to brain activation that's kind of happening cyclically, and it looks like a loop, right? Like because yeah, our brain isn't just a sequence of activation that like dissipates, but it's also a lot of closed loops, or I don't know if I should say closed loops, but you know, loops where it's just kind of activating a circle or some you know, loop of any kind over and over again, and that activation leads to something happening. I don't think AI is going to be enough to understand Gödel's incompleteness theorem. It happened. Uh-oh. All right, sort by best. All right, what do we got? 6 months ago. Is this it? Oh. Is this where you got it? I even like idealism. Just wish the guy wasn't the face of it. Oh man. All right, we're taking out. We're being the new face of idealism. All right. I was watching a critical response video that did a good job breaking down his fallacies in his arguments, and he challenged him to a debate. Kastrup ended up flagging his video for copyright infringement, which in the end didn't stand because it was fair use. Basically, this dude tries to silence criticism and only go on shows or debates he knows he will look good in. I don't know if I could trust this comment, but if he did copyright strike someone, then maybe we should be careful. Maybe we should chill. Yeah. Oh my gosh, this is what I said earlier. All right, I'm feeling vindicated because I literally said the same thing. It's just I was saying that we need to hold him to a similar standard of the hard problem just for materialism and for the mind at large. All right. Please let us pretend humans are special. Spirituality must be removed from philosophy. There are still interesting questions around science, the world, and the brain/culture. Far too much philosophy is word games trying to salvage human souls. I somewhat agree. I don't like we can't get rid of spirituality. Yeah, from the pragmatic side of things, but we probably should get like it probably needs to. You know what? No, I shouldn't say that because it's actually very beneficial for philosophy as well. It's very intuitive. That's the nice thing, and it allows you to understand a lot in a way that's intuitive. Granted, you know, at some point you need to ground yourself. But yeah, I don't know if it's. I don't think we should just get rid of it. All right. Do you think the theory I recommend is relevant to the document and original enough for you to want to leverage it in the document? That's a good question. I think I already agree with Hofstadter, but I think that we've leveraged other people to get there. But regardless, I don't think we're gonna have to talk about the like consciousness like we are in these videos in the document. Like I don't think it. Like one of the points I'm gonna try to make in this follow-up video is we really only need neural correlates to move forward in the document. We don't actually have to fill in the hard problem gap. Granted, we do just kind of imply, like one thing that we do presuppose is that there isn't some external thing that's affecting consciousness. I think it's more so that we are kind of implicitly acknowledging that science has not filled in the hard gap, but it doesn't need to for us to continue. So yeah, I don't think we have to go deep into the neural correlates of like the experience of self and whatnot. I think it's implied that's actually, we do actually talk about that. We do, you know what, we do actually talk about the self schema. Like, so maybe, yeah, you know what, let's do it. Let's throw it up there. The theory of Douglas Hofstadter. Yeah, let's just throw it in there. It might be beneficial in the future. This would be in to do. It would be to do under schema theory. And yeah, we could just put it here. And then, oh, I didn't even know we could do that. Schema theory. Where do we talk about this? Oh, probably in aligning with our intuitions, maybe. Yeah. Oh my gosh. Where do we do this? Self. Where is self? Self schema. Oh, we've already said this? No? Okay. The deeply personal nature of meaning also finds its explanation when we consider the interconnectedness of these schemas. We've discussed how schemas, including our crucial self schema, form intricate networks. Which would include our crucial self schema, form intricate networks. This intimate linkage helps us understand why our subjective experience of meaning, even for shared phenomena, often feels uniquely resonant and deeply personal. Right, this doesn't make it clear, though, what we're actually trying to get at. Schema theory is the bridge that we use that takes us from specific neural activity to the concepts that we think about. Granted, yeah, we probably will have to talk more in schema theory about what is actually happening. So perhaps that is where we can leverage Hofstadter as well. But the idea would be that there is some fundamental like self schema that's kind of leveraged frequently and connected with a lot of the activity in our brains, such that we do commonly experience things as happening to us, or we are a certain way, and we're experiencing the world as affordances according to our own self-understanding. All these philosophers talking about, is cereal soup? Is cereal soup? What is soup? What is liquid? Hey buddy, have you tried eating the damn thing? Yeah, I mean, I know that's perhaps a little reductive, but it does kind of seem like that a lot of the time. It does seem that way. All right, what's going on here? The
And
ultimate
this clip
purpose.
is an excerpt from one of those recent meetings.
Can art be utilitarian? Can it be a means to an end, that end being psychic health? In other words, can we feel better about ourselves if we do art? And I think the answer is a very loud yes, because art therapy is a thing. People have stumbled upon the fact that art helps our...
I wish I could eat consciousness. I bet it tastes weird. Very nice. Have you decided whether or not you want to leverage Chomsky's theory of universal grammar and Putnam's theory of social capital in the document? I would not leverage Putnam's, I don't think, but Chomsky's. Actually, you know what? I could potentially leverage both of them. Did I not add either Putnam? Oh, okay, so this is, we do have this here. Yeah, I don't know if I put that in, I guess I didn't put that in part one, but Chomsky, yeah, we put something here. This is just a to-do note. Maybe I'll do it in the future, maybe not. I don't know when I'm going to go through these notes. 3 years from now, maybe. We'll see. I mean, hopefully at some point as this channel grows, people like who are just curious start looking through the to-do and then, point out, hey, this should either be added or, you have this thing in the to-do that you really should use. I'm looking forward to just getting a barrage of opinions about this document. But yeah, it is in there. I have a recommendation for how individuals can increase their cognitive capacities. Do I think that's relevant? Yeah, that's some part 2 stuff, just in time for tomorrow. All right, I think we're gonna bounce out of there. We're gonna bounce out of there. So I think we're chilling. I think we can put Bernardo to rest, unfortunately. Because ideally, we find people that we can like significantly benefit from discussion or collaboration with. But, I am a souplosopher. Soupla. Everyone else just waits for it to get cold, trying to decide whether the fork or knife better describes its substance. Just use the damn spoon. What is the theory of structure? Okay. Let's get a taste. Oh, this was already a question. It's a major framework in educational psychology. Human intelligence is not fixed. It can be systematically modified through mediated learning. Structural cognitive modifiability is the theory that the structure of human intelligence is dynamic and Fersen opposed the deterministic view that intelligence is innate, static, or primarily determined by heredity. Instead, he proposed that cognitive structures can be changed through specific... Okay. Okay, so we want to just look at... yeah, I mean, we definitely want this. Where do we want this? We want this in part 2. We want this in the... Was it here? Yeah, I guess so. I mean, later on we'll probably... yeah, tomorrow I have to actually now take everything from below these top... this top outline. I gotta move it into this top outline. We're slowly getting a more developed outline here, and at some point we're gonna have to start jumping into topics. Bernardo Kastrup is finished. Yikes. I certainly don't want to just like start beefs with people though, you know. So this is another one of those instances where I think it would just be best to not like try to, you know, create content specifically for going after him. Like the challenging Alex thing is you know, we definitely want to chill. We definitely want to chill and collaborate with Alex in the future. I recently watched The Wizard of Oz from 1939. Have you ever seen that version of the movie? Ooh. I don't know. The Wizard of Oz. Probably. Is this not the original? Yeah, I have seen this one. Oh, yeah. What'd you think? I enjoyed the movie. Nice. Yeah, I think it's like a kind of a classic. Philosopher Beef is so rare, though. I wish there was more. Oh my gosh. Kastrup is lawyered up. Yeah, I don't doubt it. He seems like he's late. He's already late game in his career. Like he's probably chilling. There is philosopher beef. They just don't do ad hominems because it's a logical fallacy or something. Not Nietzsche, though. He straight up said Socrates was wrong because he was ugly. It's kind of a based statement. All right, I could probably call it here, and unless there's a specific topic anyone wants to go over before we hop off. If I ever heard this song, can we play songs on here? Been a while though. Needs a resurgence. Unfortunately, it would not be characteristic. Oh my gosh. Yeah, I don't know what we're allowed and not allowed to play on this channel, but I think I actually have seen this. I think someone sent it to me. Philosopher's Drinking Song. Yeah, unfortunately, I don't think it would be on brand for us to just start creating beefs for the sake of clout. I think our beefs need to be very strategic. And when I say that, I mean we probably don't want to beef with anyone. We just want to get people's attention through ways that gets them actually ending up liking this channel. Would they lose their jobs if they did some rap battle level insulting? The only philosopher you need to read is Wittgenstein, and everything else is entertainment to such an extent, in fact, that you might as well read literature. Is that a real quote? My philosophy is a continuation of Wittgenstein. He's a saint. Are these actual quotes? Man, I wonder what it's like to just be living like at the same time as like an incredibly influential philosopher. Granted, maybe the influential philosophers aren't known as such while they're alive, so perhaps we are, and perhaps it's going to take a few decades or a century to figure out how influential they are. All right, I'm going to say 5 minutes. That's it. I really don't have anything right now to go over. I guess we could just go over housekeeping. Do I still have this thing set up? Oh, did it work? Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, part 2 development. Thursday, we're actually going to go through the consciousness vid number 2 outline. Hopefully I'll spruce it up and it'll look good enough to actually go over on stream. And then Friday, fun day, as per usual. I don't think this weekend is that crazy, so I think I'll be around. We live in the same era as the CEO of computers, Bill Gates. I guess that's true, but I don't know if that's like the same as a philosopher. That's like an inventor, maybe. But I feel like inventors kind of lost their appeal in our age. I think people are going to be pretty yeah, like it almost there's a question that we now need to ask of like, what did they invent, and did it actually help people? And I guess you could say that computers did help people. The new question should be, how much did this inventor then donate? How much charity did they do? That's the influence of Bill Gates, as far as I'm concerned. Maybe Bill Gates set the standard for charity as a billionaire. We're inventing a bunch of dumb stuff. That's why that Times Magazine was ridiculous. That is true. Does the document have a note about Bayesian reasoning? It does not currently. I don't think I've done the deep dive into Bayesian reasoning yet. I'm not sure what is necessary yet for that. Actually, you know what? I'm guessing that's more of a practical thing, so chances are we will discuss that in part 2 when we discuss logic. Where do we have this stuff? As biases, logical reasoning. We could just throw a little note in here. Bayesian reasoning. Man, part 2 is going to take so long. Oh my gosh. I think that the launch, or like not the launch, but like when we actually start working on part 2, ideally is at the turn of the year. So hopefully we finish up all the stuff that we're doing that is related to part 1 by then. So that'll include not only the videos of me reading through the remaining sections, but also whatever other videos we want to make along the way. Granted, I kind of got stun locked by Alex O'Connor here, and so I wasn't expecting to have to make these videos, but I'm kind of glad I made that one. And I'm guessing this next one's not going to be as popular because it's not going to have Alex O'Connor on the cover, but it's still going to be as, I think, as informative. So at least it'll be beneficial. And I'm going to make sure that there's no AI music in this one, because I discovered that I can't post anything with AI content in it on r/philosophy. Now, granted, I probably shouldn't post anything on r/philosophy in general, because I do use AI when I'm writing, you know, in terms of like ensuring that everything is good and stuff like that. So technically I use AI, and I say it on my streams. So in theory, someone could send a clip of me saying that to the moderators of r/philosophy, and I don't want to get banned on r/philosophy, so I don't think we're posting on r/philosophy, unfortunately. So I have to figure out where to post this thing. Maybe on r/consciousness. Oh, I have one more recommendation. Oh, did I? It is perfectly true, as philosophers say, that life must be understood backwards, but they forget the other proposition, that it must be lived forwards. Right. We understand anything we understand is we understand it retrospectively, and then we live it forwards. Yep. I have one more recommendation, but I don't know if it's original enough for you to want to leverage it. Okay, that's fine. Yeah, sure. That one is actually real. How's the views on the AOC vid? The AOC vid? Oh, Alex O'Connor. I was thinking the other. Thought Stan hollered at. Yeah. I think they're chilling. I think we're at 6K maybe. I think we're slowly slowing down in terms of what am I doing? In terms of the views as well as in terms of comments. So we didn't get like a comment today. Yeah, we got 6K. Very different from the rest of our videos. Very large disparity of what's going on here. What's funny is the most substantive video on this channel right now is the reading of the document, Experience in the Moment, and it has the least amount of views, but there's the most amount of value in this one video, which is hilarious, except for the penguins obviously. But yeah, so be it. It is a read-through. Who wants that? The penguin video is doing well. Oh man, such a classic. I hope that blows up in the future. I was actually pretty stoked when I went onto this. I found this subreddit when I was searching about something. I don't remember what it was. It was something to do with the video editing, and I found this community, NewTubers. And I was pretty stoked when someone said something like, hey, it took me a long time for me to actually get a video to blow up, but once the video blew up and the channel started growing, the previous videos I posted, which, you know, that person spent a lot of time and effort on, they said they started getting a bunch of views. And he said the views that I thought that they deserved. So I think it's good if we just supply our channel with beneficial content, with high quality stuff. I mean, granted, you know, you could argue that some of the stuff on the channel right now, like the penguin video, or perhaps some of the stream clips, aren't as beneficial as the scripted video essay. But I think it's going to be beneficial regardless to just have content that is beneficial and informative. Thank you, Daniel End. Yeah, I was not expecting 6K by the end of this thing. I was expecting 300 if I was lucky. So that's a you know, a good difference. Does that sound relevant? What are the theories by Hayek of the knowledge problem and the sensory order? I don't know. I don't know what this is. Wait till the channel gets a light board. It's going to be big numbers. I think the light board's probably the least of our worries right now. As I mentioned, we're getting a teleprompter, and I'm going to see if I could incorporate that into my video making. And then we'll, yeah, we could get some better lighting in here sometimes. I don't know if like how bad is it to have this type of lighting like at this time of the day? Like, obviously my videos, I try to make sure that they're pretty bright, but like when we're just chilling like this, it doesn't matter that we're pretty dark in here. Should I be going big lighting? I don't know if people really care about that type of thing. All right. Significant interrelated theories: the problem of knowledge and the sensory order. Okay. Economics writings, and then scientific psychology. They express a common epistemological theme: the limits of centralized knowledge and the distributed self-organizing nature of order. The knowledge problem. Challenged the idea that an economy could be efficiently directed by central planning. Okay, so we can't use this. Yeah, even that's too out there. The sensory order. Most explicitly philosophical and scientific work. Here he turns to the nature of the mind and how perception works. The thesis is that the mind is a classificatory system that creates order out of sensory input, not by receiving data passively, but by actively organizing it. Yeah, I think there's just newer versions of this. Like I think this is kind of on the money, but it's just going to be an older version of what people do today. So I don't think it's going to be incredibly beneficial for us. And yeah, this is stuff we already buy into. Yeah. Yeah. I disagree with Hayek because I support Yang Bucks. It should have been me getting the $5 billion bailout, not Argentina or the banks or whatever. Yang wasn't giving out $5 billion, right? Oh, you're saying $5 billion, not Argentina or the banks or whatever. Yep, I'm sure we'll see many, many times over. Really wealthy people getting bailouts instead of us peons. Also, I can totally run an economy. Yeah, we got to do the role play where we run an economy here. We've already nailed the plane landing. Now let's run the economy. Did they lay off those Amazon workers? Probably not. I bet we'll see an even larger story about that when it happens. But yeah, that is kind of terrifying. I think Yang's right. I think that we're going to start seeing stuff. I think the usual argument about the horse, I don't know, when the horse lost the job, I don't know, whatever the usual argument is, that like new opportunities come up. Problem is, it's going to get to the point where if a human being can understand what the opportunity is using words and only words and vocals and stuff like that, then that job as well can be replaced at some point. What's going to be not replaceable for a little while longer is manual labor, which is so funny. I always thought that robots were coming in for the manual labor, and then the actual thought stuff would take longer, but it actually went the other way around. Because it's going to be so difficult to produce robots at scale. That's what I've been saying. Onion ran my economy last year, and I've never been richer, son. Nice. Oh, very nice. Play on words at the end there. And thank you, Daniel. All right, I gotta end this. I gotta get out of here. We're just dilly-dallying now. Maybe I could catch up on some Z's. catch up on some more neuroscience reading. You see, it's true, folks. Can we raid Willow? She's not a political streamer. Uh-oh. Is this someone that we want to Twitch Willow? Is this someone that we want to...
Yeah, bubble squeak and Ulysses
this is...
more sound bites. Agreed.
I do like this type of game. What would do we get to see tags, or is it just English? Yeah, I'm down. I mean, I guess I probably should know more about her. But oh, you know what? That's enough. That's enough to know. All right, let's do it. Let's run it. How do we do this? How do we raid? Man, we're definitely raiding up on this one. How do I actually raid? Oh, start raid. Is this it? Oh, look at that. What was that? I can't even see my own chat. Okay, what's going on here? Oh, Daniel Ennis, stand raid. New? Oh yeah, that's because I just re-entered the chat. Oh, /raid. Oh my gosh. What am I doing? And then do I do the name capital, like just Willow? /raid Willow? One viewer is ready to raid Willow in 7 seconds. Is this what's going on right now? All right. Thank you all for chilling. Have a good rest of the day. And we'll be back at it tomorrow. See you later.